All right, so we've talked about how this channel only states the facts and verifiable information. And this article comes from a blog, a very popular blog, a website called What's Up With That? Hidden NOAA temperature data reveals that 6 of the last 9 months were below normal in the USA. And NOAA can't even get June right. A lot of hype out there about June being the hottest in the history of the world. The temperatures here in the United States don't agree with what NOAA is trying to sell to the world. And the reason why I want to show you this is that, well, just in case if you think that this website's being dishonest in its information here, we click on this link right here, and this takes us to ncdc.noaa.gov, Temperature and Precipitation National Temperature Index Time Series. This is official. And let me get our handy dandy arrow out. Let me show you how to read this. So this is the year and the month, and then if it's above or below average temps. So that, for example, this February of 2005 was 2.5 degrees above normal. But then the following month in March of 2005, it was negative 0.88. All right, and I'll go ahead and show you the numbers from what we're getting ready to discuss right here. Unfortunately, this does not go all the way down to the bottom, so let's go back to the little article. You can click on the word here, and it'll show you the same information that I just showed you. So anyway, got some temperatures here to go over. This is the average of temperature anomaly since 2018, October. October, it was down 0.18 degrees Fahrenheit. November was down almost 3 degrees below Fahrenheit. December put us in the wash, basically evened us out. January of 19 put us a little bit above average temperatures. And then February of 2019, we saw a drop of almost 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit. In March, it also continued to drop. It was 2 degrees below average. And in April, some parts of the country helped temperatures get to 1.5 degrees above average. So we're still about -4, -3.5 degrees on 2019 as a whole. Then we get to May, which was down another degree and a quarter. So add that to the negative surplus so far of 4 to 5 degrees. And then June, so we can roughly say so far in 2019, each month, we're probably about -5 degrees total under average each month accumulated. So when you add up the above average and below average, the below average beats the above average by around 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The only months that showed any warming was December of 2018 and January of 2019. January 2019 also gave us the rare phenomena, the sudden stratospheric warming, which did boost temperatures above freezing in most of the parts of the Northeast during January. Now that doesn't mean it wasn't cold, but it wasn't snow and ice for a few days because of the warming, the anomaly that we were going through during the month of January. So to me, and this chart right here says it all. This is from January of 2004, and it goes all the way to now. Let me ask you something. If June was the hottest month on record, that means they're talking about that dot right there, right? Or maybe here, hottest June, right, guys? But what about these readings back here? And even back here in 2004, when we started, actually, in my opinion, I feel like that plateau is starting to show a drop. And a very consistent one, folks. Here's your peaks right there, and our constant drop of temperatures. But mainstream media wants to put it in your face that this was the hottest June on record. Hottest month ever, folks. It seems NOAA can't even agree on reporting what the actual temperature of the United States is on a monthly basis, using their own old reliable data while neglecting to report the best data they have. Why? That's a travesty of government incompetence worth investigating. One wonders if screaming headlines about hottest ever this month would even exist if the world had a global version of the U.S. Climate Reference Network, where the data was quality controlled and measurements taken far away from human-induced heat of urbanization. Guys, I was talking to people earlier today about human-induced heat of urbanization and how we continue to watch the news and other fake news social media sites that talk about the world's hottest temperatures ever and where they go to get these reports. They're on rooftops, they're on runways, they're in between 2-3 lane highways beating down on an area that has trees cleared so more sunlight reaches the... I'm not lying, folks. There's a weather station that reads temperatures and wind speeds and everything like that on the 87 here in the Northway. And where the weather station has been positioned, there is a football field's worth of no trees. If you're familiar with driving the 87 in New York, you know that it's a very beautiful scenic route. Trees on both sides, north and south sides of this highway. But where this weather station was located was in a convenient spot of about 100 yards wide of no trees, nothing but pavement near, and plus, of course, the constant flow of traffic. Usually when you're traveling on the 87, you don't see the southbound traffic, vice versa. So when you hear us complain and stand up and scream and shout about how all these hottest temperatures ever, and then you go back and you look at the raw data and you see the actual temperatures that have been below average this year, you start to wonder, where are we getting this from? Where are we getting this hottest month ever? And this, I mean, guys, we're not corrupting these numbers, anything. This is straight from NOAA. They're just showing us right here. And here is the complete record, folks, actually, of temperature up and downs. Now, look at this. March of 2012, almost 8 degrees in the United States. Wow, that's crazy. And then we get to 2012. Later in that year, we have a couple of months that cool off a little bit. 13. Start to see a little bit more negatives pop up in 2013. 14 is warm. 2016, we know that was warm. That's when our warming stopped, right? We can all agree with that. 2017, so February of 2017, look at that, 6 degrees above normal. It's pretty warm for February 2017. Again, we are at the very beginning of lower solar activity. And as you look through this, we will start to see more negative temperatures appearing, more than the ones that are... Now, we're not seeing 5 degrees in one day, in 1 month. In fact, the last time we saw something that high was February of 2017, 6 degrees above average in that month. But really, if you look out after that, we've got 2.29 degrees above average in April, and then May, -11 or -0.11, then a degree and a half in June, a degree and 3/4 in July, and then we start to fall in August. Go on an Indian summer, slight rise through the winter of that year of 2017, early winter, fall. But the temperatures above average are not 3 degrees, 4 degrees, 5 degrees, 6 degrees. We're talking 1.22, 1.58. Here's a peak of 2.74. And then we go into 2018 and we see it's a degree above average, and then 3/4 of a degree above average, and then below average in March, and below average in April. And then May pretty much wiped out the negative that we had for the year. June wasn't too bad. July, August, normal sort of summer, but only by 1.5 degrees each month. And then we started noticing in October and November some cooling. Like I said, December and January's warming wiped out that cooling from late 2018. But right now, we can definitely say since February, we have seen the drop in the negatives, and it's -3 degrees, -2 degrees. Let's go back into 16 and find out if we ever had a month during that period of time. Okay, so in 2015, we lost 2.32 degrees in February. But as I'm going back, here's one in 2014, February, 3 degrees, 0.13 Fahrenheit. That's probably during that late polar vortex, so that matches up. But they're spread out. In 15 and 16 and 14, and then we get back to 2010, which was our last minimum. And even then, it's kind of back and forth, evens out, honestly. Not a lot of cooling, not a lot of warming going on in 2008 and 2009. Obvious. Okay, and this is another great example here to show people when we're talking about the sun doesn't have an effect on the climate, really? You don't say. So 2008 was the last solar minimum, the beginning of it, and -1.67, -0.68, -142, -142 again in April, -133 degrees Fahrenheit. So for the first 5 months of this solar minimum, which by the way was the deepest in 150 years plus, dropped the temperatures. They warmed up a little bit in June and July, not even a full degree. Before August, they started dropping. September, October, a little bit of warmth in November, and then again dropping again in December. And as we got into the minimum, again, more negatives than positives. And we cooled off quite a bit in 2010. 2010, a lot of people talked about that winter, 2009, 2010. Yeah, December 2009, we lost 3.7 degrees below average, basically, for the U.S. in 2009. So these temperatures even reflect when we hit solar minimums and grand minimums. 2020 is supposed to be the beginning of a grand solar minimum. 2019 is 11 years after 2008, which was the last minimum, and look at where our temperatures are. Now, granted, January was warm, 0.63 degrees above average in January, but since February, we have had 4 out of 5 months losing temperatures, and May and June falling. July is almost over, so we'll have the numbers for that. Yeah, we had a couple of heat waves in France, but that's really the climax of the heat that we've experienced this year. We had a heat wave that supposedly rolled through the Midwest. Look, I understand we lost 6 people during the U.S. heat wave, but 4 days of 90-degree temperatures is the minor qualification of a heat wave. We used to have things that lasted 12 days at 90 degrees for 3 days, and then 95 degrees for 3+ days, and then close to 100 degrees for 2 or 3 days during this heat. That's a heat wave. Those happened all the time. We're watching the heat indices, not the actual temperatures. So this goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning of this broadcast when we were telling you guys about being censored and how things are just being kind of wiped off the internet when it talks about the opposite of what you hear mainstream. When we say we're cooling, that's when things go awry. But NOAA shows us proof that we are cooling. The average temperature here in the United States since January has dropped. I should say since February. Leave a link in the description. Another article to check out here. Sea ice. Here we go. So in my early research of the grand solar minimum, I've learned that Alaska and the western part of the Arctic and the western part of the Antarctica tend to see melting, temperature increase. Today, some article shot out 82 degrees in Alaska near where there was ice. But if you go to the east, the eastern part of this region of the Arctic, Greenland, Norway, you are going to hear a different side of this story about ice shrinking. Let me tell you, folks, do a little research. It does you a little good. If you look up temperatures for Alaska during grand solar minimums, it's there. You'll find that region, and the Arctic as well. The northern Arctic will warm at times. Now, when you have warm temperatures invading cold spots, it's pushing that cold air somewhere else. Basic. So where we're seeing the warmer air, it's pushing even colder air to a region of the Arctic that is seeing record growth first-year ice. This article here talks about 2 icebreakers that were supposed to do research in the Arctic. Both turned away. The one that's extraordinary, the first one is extraordinary, less than 2 meters thick of ice. Okay, the first of these. But the second one, the first-year ice was 3 meters. This was a Norwegian icebreaker on July 15th. Also bound for the North Pole, had to turn back due to sea ice up to 10 feet thick. All right, this was reported on the Norwegian News Report and the blog Ice Age Now, Mr. Robert Felix, on July 16, 2019. But let me fast forward this down here at the bottom. This is what caught my attention. However, first-year ice that's 3 meters thick is indeed rare occurrence, especially in the southern Barents Sea. The bottom line, the last sentence. The propensity of navigational charts to use ice age rather than ice thickness to describe ice conditions almost certainly explains Norwegian icebreaker captain getting caught off guard by exceptionally thick first-year ice, because first-year ice 3 meters thick simply should not exist. 3 meter thick first-year ice should not exist. Why? Is it because Al Gore said that it wouldn't be there? No. We do see first-year ice growth. 2.2 meters is definitely rare. It's not the rarest, but it's rare. It was rare enough to turn an icebreaker ship around from its mission. But the second one encountered 3 meter thick ice, and simply says here at the bottom that the Norwegian icebreaker captain getting caught off guard by exceptionally thick ice, first-year ice that is, because first-year ice 3 meters thick simply should not exist, meaning record growth. Something we haven't seen in a while because we have been warm. That global warming pause from 2000 to 2016. Temperatures peaked on the UAHA at 0.88 degrees above centigrade. So, ever since 2016, we've witnessed a steady decline in temperatures. And we've also witnessed CO2 continuing to rise. And then we bring you stories like this that talk about the thickness of the Arctic right now near Greenland. We're just getting started, folks. We got more to talk about when it comes to this weather coming up here. This is not a coincidence, okay? So first, talking about a record-breaking temperature in Minnesota at 37 degrees, showing you extremely thick ice in mid-July, okay? This is summer for this region. There is supposed to be retreat of ice in this region during the summer months of the Northern Hemisphere. It happens, folks. I know. Summertime it melts, wintertime it gets cold again and it freezes. Imagine that. But right now, the first-year ice in some areas, 3 meters thick, simply should not exist. But yet mainstream media is trying to tell you that there's record melt happening right now, that this is so unusual, it shouldn't be happening. These people don't do any reading for themselves. And I'm looking at this graph, and I don't know. more information that we wanted to point out to you guys. Mari, with her awesome learning series videos that we're going to be releasing here soon. I know Mari put out a great solar update today earlier. We got something else in store for you here as well. I'm going to actually get the privilege to watch it before she publishes it. And hopefully, as time goes by, we'll be able to include videos that talk about things like this as well. When you hear in mainstream media about hysteria over ice melting in the summertime in a region where it should, and then you have the same area but a different part of it with record cold and record ice gain. Who do you believe, right? I want to believe the people that provide me the actual information on where to look at the raw data. And this is the sea ice thickness as of June 19th, 2019. I've seen this chart before. I haven't seen it the ice this thick, this early, if you ask me. But I'm just a guy that's been reporting on it for 3 years, so, you know, I could be off. Who knows? But I'm pretty used to seeing it at this point in time. So anyway, let's move on, folks, shall we? Collapse of wind power threatens Germany's green energy transition. Hardly any new wind turbines were built in Germany in the first half of the year. Turbine makers call it a punch in the gut of the green energy transition and blames environmentalists. The expansion of wind power the first half of this year collapsed to its lowest level since the introduction of Renewable Energy Act in 2000. All in all, just 35 wind turbines were built with an output of 231 megawatts. This corresponds to a decline of 82% compared to the already weak period of the previous year, according to the German Wind Energy Association, the BWE in Berlin. This makes one nearly speechless, says Matthias Zillinger, I guess. At the presentation of the data, the manager directing the Power Systems Division of the German Engineering Federation spoke of a blow to the gut of energy turnaround. This actual development doesn't match at all to the current climate protection debate. So the proof is in the pudding, basically. Everybody's gotten a spoonful of it, and they don't like the way it tastes. It wasn't delicious like they thought it was going to be, because back when these green energy transition policies started beginning, people were going, yay, innovation, yay, solar panels, all right, green. Nobody thought about the amount of money it would take to maintenance these solar and wind fields, to harvest it. What do you do when natural disasters strike? Do you rebuild? What do you do with the waste of solar panels that fail? Where do those get taken care of? So many stories where I've reported on these wind turbines failing, just exploding, you know, killing wildlife. Nobody thought about that part of it. So the pudding basically doesn't taste very good because someone left it out of the refrigerator, so to speak. And it's gotten nasty. And if headlines like this are coming out of Germany, which when I talk to my friends about climate change and how inefficient solar and wind is right now, and they always point out, well, Germany's doing it. Germany's switched everything. Yeah, Germany. And now Germany is facing a major situation over here. The bills are out of control over here. These turbines are not producing enough energy that was told to them back in the day. Same with the solar. Again, the federal government speaks of its achievement of ambitious renewable expansion of the climate protection goals for the years 2030 and 2050. On the other hand, perspective is missing. The discrepancy between claim and reality is growing. Yeah, the claim that men can control climate and reality that's growing is, no, it's the sun. And it's funny, they mention the years 2030 through 2050. When all, we got to have emissions down. Oh, so I get it. It all just came to me, right? I had an aha moment. So by the time we get to 2030, we all know over here on this side of the fence that it's going to be pretty cold. A lot colder than what we're used to. Shorter growth seasons, way shorter than what we're seeing right now. Colder temps, colder winters, brutal cold winters through 2055. So here's the setup, folks. It's like volleyball. The guy that does the setup before the guy spikes it. So they're going to blame all these years, they're going to tax the hell out of you for CO2. All right. And then when 2030 happens, it's going to be too cold. And we did too much. Oh my God. We took too much CO2 out of the atmosphere. Now look what happened. Everything's freezing. We can't do anything. Oh boy. These policies backfired. We got to warm the country up again. And then they'll slowly but surely try to turn back the coal and the natural gas. They think that's how it's going to work. They think that they're going to be able to fleece you for the next 10 years. I don't think they make it out of the first 3 years. I think they start firing up coal plants all over the world once they see some of these brutal winters that are coming. That's my honest opinion. The Green Deal policies here in New York will fail before 2030. 2023 is when they intend to start the banning of coal and natural gas. Yeah, right. Wait till this winter and the winter following it. I'd like to see them try to shut down natural gas plants in the Northeast in 2021 and 2022 winter. I'd love to see that, because that's when all that's supposed to happen here in New York. People are going to be forced to move out of states like this because they're not going to be able to afford to heat their homes. They're going to be living like guys like Dr. Circus, who talks about where people only have heaters in their beds because they can't afford the energy cost of heating their homes during a winter day. So everybody bundles up and, you know, sweaters and pants and hats and gloves, and at nighttime they get to go into this warm little bed because they waste, or not waste, but they use all the energy to heat themselves at nighttime when they're sleeping in their beds. That's how they're adapting to the high energy prices. And where was Dr. Shear? Where was he? Was it Algeria? Brazil. Sorry about that. Argentina, I was thinking, but Brazil. So is that coming to the United States? Is that coming to the UK? Is that coming to Germany? Who knows? I'm not a predictor, but I can tell you that there's more and more people out there who are trying to point out that this green energy stuff is not going to work. It's going to rip apart economies. It's going to put us in the poorhouse faster than failing crops. I can tell you that right now. New York Times, authoritative propaganda skeptics blast UN warning of mass extinction. Hallelujah! A widely touted United Nations report predicting mass species extinction took a beating Wednesday at a House subcommittee hearing with Republican-called witnesses, blasting the claims of highly exaggerated and authoritative propaganda. The executive summary released May 6 by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform and Ecosystem Services concluded that a transformative change was needed to save as many as 1 million species at risk of extinction. By the way, I think we have somewhere around the tune of 8 million species out there. So just, not that 1 million doesn't mean it matters, but I'm just letting you know how many extinctions. Anyway, the evidence is unequivocal. Biodiversity, which is important to its own right and essential for human well-being, is being destroyed by human activities at a rate unprecedented in human history. Robert Watson, former chairman of IPBES, told Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water, Oceans, and Wildlife. Representative Jared Huffman, the California Democrat who chairs the subcommittee, said Earth is currently in what they call a sixth-mass extinction, and species disappearing 100 times faster than historic rates, mostly because of the things that we are doing. Challenging that premise was Patrick Moore, a former Greenpeace leader, who argued that species extinction has declined in the past century thanks to international efforts. He insisted there was zero evidence that any such event is occurring now and has even begun to occur. As with the claim, the manufacturer crisis claim, climate crisis, they are using the specter of mass extinction as fear tactic to scare the public into compliance, Mr. Moore said. The IPBES itself is an existential threat to a sensible policy on biodiversity conservation. The report was prepared by 145 authors over 3 years using 15,000 peer-reviewed publications and 15,000 comments, but the full document remains classified as yet to have been released. A summary was released 2 weeks ago at a plenary session in Paris. He says, right now I feel like I'm part of a book club and we're going to give opinions on a book, except we're all making it up because no one has actually read the book, Utah Republican said, Rob Bishop. If you'd actually waited until the report was released and people could look at it, maybe there would be a point at the point that this could be a legitimate hearing. The 5 factors driving extinction are land, sea use changes, exploitation of organisms, climate change, pollution, invasive species, Mr. Huffman said. All of these things we can do something about, but we are not on track to slow the extinction crisis, said Mr. Huffman. We need to do more. Extinction crisis claim met with skepticism from Republican Tom McClintock, California Republican, who ticked off previous apocalyptic extinction predictions, including the 1970 warning by Smithsonian officials, 75%, 80% of the animals would be extinct by 1995. So here's where it gets juicy. Climate Depot, Mark Morano, described the report as politically driven document, the latest UN appeal to give it more power, more scientific authority, more money, and more regulatory control. At best, the UN science panels represent nothing more than authoritative bureaucracy, claiming they hype the problem and then come up with a solution that puts them in charge of solving the issue. Mr. Morano said in his prepared remarks, a more accurate term for the UN than authoritative scientists may be authoritative propaganda. So good to see voices like this coming out and defending us. People who have half a brain here know that we're not doing anything to start or stop climate change. No House committee hearing this year would be complete without a climate change row. Republicans took aim at the Green New Deal, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the 97% consensus, while Democrats stress the impact of global warming on species. So Republicans did the sensible thing. They criticized the Green New Deal, the Paris Climate Agreement, and the 97% consensus claim. The things that I think all of us here in our community, that we probably, if you talk to us not knowing us as strangers and we're telling people, hey, look, this is what's happening, those are the 3 main things that we carry over our shoulders. The Green New Deal, the Paris Treaty climate, and of course, the third being, what? One of those things, guys. The heat's getting to me. I had to turn the air off so we could hear each other talk here. Oh, yeah. Really, really good. All the 97% scientific consensus. That's the 3 things. I know I focus on those 3 because these are the 3 main things in mainstream media that is trying to convince people that we are warming because of our actions. Those are the 3 culprits on why people believe that. Hopefully more skepticism will occur in the future. We all know that our election season is heading into a full-on fledged battle on climate change between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. This should be an interesting election season. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.